Hi, in my last video, I was talking about how to be positive and strong during your troubled teenage years. And in that video, I told about rage, anger, how I managed anger. And particularly in this video, I wanted to talk about how I actually changed my anger into activism, how I changed that rage into an energy for betterment. During my teenage years, especially from 13 to almost like in my early 20s and all that, I've seen so many transgender people, gender non-conforming people, uh, my community, the transgender community, effeminate teenagers, boys who were effeminate, how they were treated and bullied and uh, abused by fellow students at school, and also how we, as gender non-conforming and transgender kids, were shamed in public by different people, sometimes even by relatives. When you're in a family gathering, family event, one of the relatives would always put something mean that would be actually heard by everybody, and you would be feeling so shameful and you would be shivering. I've had that experiences. This video that I'm talking yesterday and today, and the videos that I'm talking to you further, I will be talking to you further, is not about how to be a strong transgender person. It's actually how to be a strong person. You can be a transgender, you can be a cisgender or whoever. You can be a male, female, or transgender, but we are all humans, and I really wanted to talk to humans. I wanted to share my experiences in my little talks. So that's why I'm here, presenting all that in the YouTube videos. And talking about changing anger into productivity, changing anger into activism. It started when I witnessed what my community went through. I've seen one of my friends, a senior to me, a transgender person. She was actually thrown kerosene on her body, and her brother was actually coming after her, running after her to, lit and burn her. Why? Because he thought she brought shame to the family. She actually brought shame to the family. And I've seen my other friend, very, very importantly, my other friend who was actually dragged in an auto rickshaw. She was a sex worker. She was dragged in an auto rickshaw by 7 men. And the next morning she comes, and I run to her home. The next morning she comes. I find that her dress is all torn and she is crying, and I see marks on her face, on her shoulders, and on her hands. That night, she was actually raped by 7 men. 7 men. And she was a sex worker. I was 13-year-old during that time. I actually told her, Akka, let us go to the police and give a complaint to them that this was done to you. And she told me, no, I'm a sex worker and I cannot go to the police station. No, because the police will not give me the protection needed. They will not listen to what I talk. Rather, they would be judgmental and they would be talking about why I am a sex worker and why this happened to me because I am a sex worker. So that will be their typical straight statement. That is what she said. And the fact that she never ever got justice for what has happened to her also turned into a fire, and it stayed in me. I've seen I've seen trans people, trans teenagers whom I grew up with, being abused, being raped, being subjects of ridicule, shame, violence, and I was also subject to. Uh, I was also a victim to such kind of a treatment, especially in my school. I was every day. I was in trouble. Every day I was bullied. So I would run to parks and forests and theaters, and I would hide. But how long was that hiding possible? So during all my school years, I hid somehow till 10th standard. I hid secretly, but once in a while I will definitely attend the classes to make sure that my attendance isn't bad. But I hated school and I didn't want to go to school at all. It's only during 11th and my 12th standards that I was a little bit comfortable, because I had learned the art of retaliating. I think that was it. But coming back to the um, topic on turning anger into activism, I think these incidences that I saw during my childhood, the violence, the bullying, the shame that happened to me as well as my transgender community people, that was an anger that I was so, it became stronger. And I wasn't angry at one person, I was angry at the entire society. And I understood that this violence, this bullying, this hurt, this abuse comes from ignorance. It comes from ignorance of people. It comes from the lack of knowledge of people on understanding gender, especially transgender. So, neither did our people, my parents, the listener, your parents or grandparents, had the opportunity to read or study or listen to a transgender person, a third gender person's story. In Mahabharata and in Ramayana, we do have, in all these Indian mythologies, we do have characters and stories on a third dimension, a third gender perspective. But these tales were only like fantasy or, religious tales. But when it comes to practicality, it was different. I mean, people who were different, people who were identifying differently, dressing up differently, whose body language was different, uh, breaking the masculinity, breaking the femininity that was supposed to be in our bodies, that was considered as unacceptable. So, this was the ignorance that was persisting, that was prevalent in our society, and it's still prevalent, of course, but we have changed a lot. How did that change? I mean, how did the fact that this ignorance is there in the society, and that I understood, of course. And then later, what I did was, when I finished my 12th standard, I took up BA English Literature. I finished it, and then I took up MA Journalism and Mass Communication, and I completed my master's degree. And then I started writing blogs. I started writing a blog about who is a transgender person is, what I feel. It was personal experiences, all about how I feel about my friends being treated, how transgender people are being treated, how transgender people are portrayed in the media, how transgender people are portrayed in the Indian film world, Indian films, Tamil films, Malayalam films, Telugu films, Kannada films, everywhere, how transgender people are treated in a very, very, very bad way, wrong way, which miscommunicates the message that transgender people can be ridiculed. This, it passes on the message to the society. These kind of portrayals where a transgender person is portrayed as a comic character, a sexual pervert, um, all these messages from the mainstream media were all the reasons for this ignorance that prevailed in our community, in the entire society, of course. So I took up my education. My education was the tool, my knowledge was the tool, it was the key to change this system. I've done my part, and each one of us have to do our parts, of course, but I'm just talking about how I changed it, how my part, how I played it. So I actually started writing this blog. During that time, there was no blogspot, no blogger, but there was one blog called tblog.com. So I started this a subscription. I signed up and then I started writing in tblog.com, and then I had my own website. Kalki.tblog.com was my website. So I was every day I would put up my thoughts and photographs, my experiences with the community, how I felt uh, being a trans person, how my friends have experienced it, and what kind of dignity and respect is required by us. Everything I used to write. And of course, even about my romances and how I feel about love and relationships, everything. This was in 2004-5, quite some years back, more than a decade ago. And what really happened was people began to read it. People began to, I began to get readers, and it went on. It spread. It spread to hundreds, to thousands, and lots of people, and even the media started to read it. And then at the same time, simultaneously, I published a book. I mean, a magazine. It's called Sahodari. So it was a Tamil magazine which had 200 printed copies. Since I was also good in languages, Tamil and English, that helped me to communicate with the community, my transgender community. So this magazine was in Tamil. Um, I used to type it on my computer, and then it had everything what trans people are looking for: information on health, medical care, self care, beauty, confidence, the motivation that is needed, the motivation nobody gave me or our community. I started giving that motivation to our transgender people through this magazine. So this magazine was actually, at those time, it was supported by uh, a private NGO, supported for almost an year. So once this magazine came out, the NGO workers, they would distribute it among the transgender persons in our district. And then the magazine got very popular among our community. So it also had a gossip column about my friends and our other community people. So it was very, very, very popular. And it had a great impact not only on the local transgender community, but of course, among their friends and family and all that. That is how I actually started it, with a magazine, with a blog. So I actually got into media, people's media, community media, and that is how I changed it in 2004, 2005. The result is I was invited to colleges and universities and media houses, televisions. They invited me to speak on their forums, and magazines and newspapers. They started taking my interviews, and then it happened. I had voice, a major voice, a big voice. And within 3-4 years, I actually started our foundation. So once the foundation work started, so many things started. We began to work on the legal rights issues, and I went up to the Supreme Court. Everything started in just with a pen and a paper. It just started with an idea to spread the knowledge of gender, transgender, LGBT rights. So it started with in a blog. It started on a piece of paper, and people came all over. Our community gathered, and we were all inspired. Like me, there are many activists who did their own part, putting up stones together in a jar full of half of water, putting one by stone together, and the water raises up, and the crow drinks the water. It's like that. So that is how you actually turn your anger into activism. So that is how I changed it. I could have been a person who was angry, who hated people, who was bitter, withdrawn, failure. But I didn't choose that. My anger was not against one person, was not at all against anybody who bullied. Sometimes I did retort to bullies, but the fact that bullies are bullies because they are ignorant and they are stupid. That was the fact about the bullies. So teaching them how to behave, how to talk was an enormous job, but I was not doing it to one person. I was teaching the media. I was teaching our film world how to treat us, and they would do their work. They would do their work in TV, newspapers, and film world. That is how I changed my anger into activism, productivity, change. And that is how I changed the world. All right. Thank you very much, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.